So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this discussion on scientific advocacy and the Dublin Declaration. This webinar is hosted by Pathways, which is a new funded project whose main purpose is to identify and increase sustainable practices along the supply and production chains of European livestock sector. And so this project really strives to reduce environmental impacts whilst addressing societal demands for nutritious and affordable meat and dairy products. And this is why we are here today, because in order to chart a common path for transition, it is important not only to take into account all the factors and demands at play, but above all, the scientific evidence. And today we will listen to the voices of experts who have different perspectives on the role of livestock in society and try to understand in a constructive way the challenges that need to be overcome in order to find common grounds. And the starting point of this discussion is the Dublin Declaration on the Societal Role of Livestock, a document from 2022 signed by over 1,000 scientists, which asserts that meat, dairy, and eggs are crucial to people's diet by providing essential nutrients, environmental benefits, and thus arguing against calls to eliminate animal source foods. However, the declaration also sparked criticism from scientists as well, who claimed that the document is misleading, that it was written by authors with industry ties as a tool to lobby against EU environment and health policies, that it downplays negative impacts of the industrial livestock production, and also an important point for today's discussion, that it undermines scientific rigor and transparency. But to understand both sides of this discussion, we have with us today Professor Frédéric Leroy, co-author of the Dublin Declaration, food scientist and
No
advocate
way
for
that's how it's
livestock
pronounced.
societal value, and Dr. Iryna Herzon, senior lecturer and published critic of the Declaration, expert in sustainability and conservation science. My name is Barbara Machado. I'll be your moderator today. I'm a European journalist. And I think we can get started. And first, I would like to give the floor to Professor Frédéric, um, which will be followed by comments from Dr. Iryna and her perspective. And then we will have about half an hour of discussion, during which our audience can also engage.
This is a live Zoom call,
To
so I
those listening
can't
to us
pause
today,
it
you
at
can
all.
also ask questions in the chat box. And yeah, very excited for this discussion today. So please, Professor Frederick, I would like to know what are the main messages that the declaration wanted to pass, what's its
Yeah,
core
we'd love to
aim.
know.
So the floor is yours to present the declaration.
Thank you very much. I hope this is on screen now.
Oh, this guy's slides
Can
are
you just
something else,
confirm,
by the
Barbara?
way.
You see my slides? Yes, sir?
Sorry, I see your screen. Yes, everything.
Okay, perfect. Right. So thank you very much for inviting me to talk about the Dublin Declaration and present its main ideas and purpose. So for ease of
Looks nervous.
discussion, I copy-pasted the declaration on a few slides. It's not that long. It's rather concise document. And I will
Look how
walk
he's underlined
you through
the
the
part that I
different
said they've hidden.
paragraphs and highlight a few of
That's the
its
one
main
point. Many
ideas. I will
improvements are
not
neither going to
read
go
the
back to that.
declaration. You can do that in your own time, but I will just pick out some of the
Yeah, let me just cherry pick from this.
sentences that are interesting for the upcoming discussion. So why was the declaration made? As you can read in the paragraph, at the end of this paragraph, the declaration had the purpose to give voice to many scientists around the world who researched diligently, honestly, and successfully in the various disciplines to achieve a balanced view of the future of animal agriculture. And it has basically served as a counter reaction to what we see as disproportionate anti-livestock sentiment in public discourse. With the comment, and this is a comment that triggered quite a bit of hostility, with the comment that livestock systems are too precious to society to become the victim of simplification, reductionism, or zealotry. Now, we are not seeing ghosts. We do indeed see lots of statements out there that are excessive in the way they condemn livestock. And I've put a few examples on the right of the screen. I will not talk about all of those, but you'll find plenty of examples in both scientific literature, on social media, And then you even, for instance, I'll take one, you have the UNEP site, United Nations Environment Program. You'll find one of the articles on their website stating that the world's most urgent problem is meat. Now, that's clearly something that I would expect not even people within UNEP to be supportive of, but nonetheless, that ends up on their website. You see a reference to the Eat Lancet document. So that's the first version,
no
a very recent
There's a bunch of problems coming from meat, clearly.
Last week. But in the first version, there's an explicit reference in Key Recommendation 5 to red meat as being an unhealthy food and mentioned in the same sentence as sugar. Initiatives like C40 City have set what they call an ambitious target for 2030, setting the meat and dairy consumption in some of the major global cities to 0 kilograms. Now, these are the kind of examples that we think are counterproductive to society for a number
livestock. Well, he's the pro-livestock industry guy. Yeah.
I'm just struggling a bit.
I see what you mean there, Brett.
Camera. Right. So then, so in the previous slide, you also we clearly also want to point out. I mean, we want to be very explicit about it. We are not arguing for status quo at all. We're not saying livestock systems can get a free pass. We should just increase meat production. That's not at all what we're saying.
That is advanced by their frames, though, as we saw.
Talk about a double challenge, unprecedented indeed. We have a massive pressure coming from population increases, resource depletions, and so forth.
Again, look how this other side is really buried in the middle of the paragraph there.
And for the foreseeable future, some methods and scale of animal production systems will put a lot of pressure on several outcomes, including biodiversity, climate change, nutrient flows, and also come with a concern for animal health and welfare, and all of that grouped under the umbrella of the One Health approach. So the challenges are clear. The challenges have been recognized. On the right side, you see the pathways document from the FAO, similarly looking for those challenges and ways to resolve them. We can only face those challenges and only overcome them if we're going to use the evidence-based approaches with the most robust methodologies and paths forward. The declaration then goes on with a few sections talking about what we could see as the 3 pillars of discussion. The first one is human health. This declaration is clear on this. We find that the regular consumption of meat, dairy, and eggs, and you could add fish. We must talk about terrestrial animals, but we also could take into account fish, as part of well-balanced and well-formulated diets are advantageous for human beings. And we do identify a lot of...
They deny claiming that you need meat to be healthy. They did not try to defend that claim.
Take the position of animal source foods and fill in the same, and tick the same boxes. The Dublin Declaration in 2022 was followed in 2024 with a Denver call for action. So after the Dublin summit we organized, there was also a Denver summit. And the Denver call for action builds on this and calls for nourishment-oriented policies, with the remark that the very widespread discreditation nowadays of animal source foods must cease, so that we can have proper and more balanced evaluations of their role in nourishment and healthy diets. The second section, of course, is the environment. That's a very crucial one.
Must stop.
The declaration refers to a couple of benefits of including animals in the food system. Now, you can talk all you want, of course, about the detrimental effects. Again, that's being acknowledged, but we also have to factor in the fact that livestock brings in...
Hey, BPM, good to see you. Thanks for joining.
A reference to the valorization of resources that are otherwise difficult to valorize, and that has to do with land use, and it has to do with byproducts of crop agriculture, inedible biomass, and so forth, and then a whole range of ecosystem services, carbon sequestration, soil health, biodiversity, and so forth. That, of course, is depending on the management of the livestock systems, and I do agree that the reference to well-managed livestock systems, the well-managed part, carries a lot of weight, and that's something that indeed will need our full attention and full investment And the declaration in that way is absolutely making the call to improve management systems worldwide. However, it's also saying that the one-size-fits-all kind of solutions where we just decimate livestock herds, or some people go as far as eliminating livestock from the system, that will come also with the consequential loss of all the benefits and would make things probably worse. So the Denver call for action in that matter calls for recognition of the system complexities. Whenever you're going to change the system fundamentally, you're going to have a very complex response, and that again needs careful deliberation from the scientific side of things. The third pillar is the socio-economical one. Livestock, besides the purely nutritional.
These slides are unbelievable, the way he's highlighting the cherry-picked bits that we went through on stream just the other week. It's so transparent.
But we have to think about clothing and power, manure, employment, income, social aspects, the foundational contribution to rural communities worldwide, financial capital. There are gender effects that have been very well documented also in an FAO document a couple of years ago. And currently, so the paragraph also ends then with a reference to or with a statement highlighting.
Yeah, if we reduce meat consumption, it might be sexist.
Performance across all of the dimensions of health, environment, and socioeconomics is nowadays proceeding. It's proceeding faster than ever in history, and essentially, the way we're dealing with the food systems offers lots of reasons to believe that we can make the best of it. So opposed to this view, where we are saying that, look, we start from something that has been valuable and always has been valuable to human civilizations, rather than trying to dismantle that, we think we can improve this. Other voices, such as George Monbiot, would say that we have to get rid of the conventional ways of farming, even if we try to improve them through science, and we have to switch to other food systems that are radically different, which then for him would be precision fermentation. You have influential think tanks like Rethinks saying that the industry will collapse by 2030 and we will have new systems in place, food as software, 3D printing, and so forth and so on. Those are, of course, very radical points of view. So we have a spectrum here, obviously, but I would like to make the audience understand that we are dealing with solutions in a certain spectrum of ideas. The declaration ends with the outlook for livestock, where the statement is that livestock is the millennial-long proven method to create healthy nutrition and secure livelihoods. And it refers to it as a wisdom deeply embedded in cultural values everywhere. And this, once more, is opposed to the idea that we can just have a Control-Alt-Delete function and start all over again with a newly designed food system. Because of all the great challenges that we've seen, because of sometimes the asymmetry in some of those debates, we are calling for scientific discussions. We're also calling for standards of evidence that need to be in place if we start those discussions, because obviously in any side of this debate, you can take any position and you can always come up with some sort of evidence or some sort of argumentation. I think we have to respect the scientific method, contrast those different points of view as much as we can, and come to certain common grounds, which I'm certain we will find, and I'm certain I would also be able to identify with my partner in the conversation today, and then resolve and take position on the differences that probably will not be attuned in, but always through respectful and open scientific confrontation. Talking about confrontation, we've had a lot of pushback, and the pushback has ranged from very cheap attacks, accusing us of being a voice for big meat and big dairy and whatever you want. So you see also here on top an article coming from a activist journalist hub called Sentient, and they say simply, well, thousands of scientists who signed the declaration are not impartial, and it's full of animal industry bias.
Any pushback on
and
that?
Then we have the more constructive debates, and I'm happy to acknowledge
any actual denial of that, or just
again have my partner in conversation here today because I think at least this has the merit of having a constructive attempt at opening that conversation, which we certainly welcome. The Dublin Declaration has been signed by, and I'm almost finishing, the Dublin Declaration has been signed by about 1,200 scientists. Some of those scientists work together with industry.
There's another beauty, by the way.
They are, most of them probably are animal scientists, not exclusively, but there are indeed a lot of animal scientists involved. A lot of them will work with the industry. I do not personally, but I don't think that's necessarily the problem.
That's a lie.
There's a quote here from Frank Mitloehner.
That's a lie. He does work with the livestock industry. He's lying.
The declaration, where he talks about a specific issue and the fact that he is actually paid by his university to work together with the stakeholders in the industry and to help them to achieve a better environmental performance, which anyway they will have to reach in the upcoming years and decades. And with this, I'll stop my presentation and give back the word to you, Barbara.
Thank you very much, Professor Frédéric. Dr. Iryna, what are your thoughts on what was just presented? What would you like to add? The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thank you, Barbara, and the whole project for inviting me, and Frédéric for a small introduction into my response. I think I will start with a little bit background of my own kind of personal academic position in this. So I'm an agroecologist, and for 30 years, I've been working very much with livestock systems that have very special values, very much of what is described in Dublin Declaration. So high nature value farmlands, for example, across Europe. So the traditional systems that are based on extensive pastoralism and associated with many ecosystem services that are evoked in this declaration. And actually, about 10 years ago, I moved to live on a farm that has such pastoral system and grows beef according to agroecological principles and organic, etc. Very big cultural values. And so I have 300 cows behind my windows, but as a scientist, I'm also very well aware about the accumulated impact of, 1.6 billion cows that are, at the moment, we have about 30 billion chicken. So, taking this small local system that works and trying to put it in a global perspective is something on my mind, and I worked with that. I'm saying it simply to underline that I have a very good position to appreciate the many benefits of livestock. That's where I come from. I also have experience with policy work, and I know that often we have one solution that doesn't fit every context and every system. And Frédéric, you evoked this in the Dublin Declaration, and I really hope we'll
she's going to
discuss
grant a
this.
lot
So
of
in
the
what
agroecological
context,
stuff
within
off
what
the bat,
system,
and then
and
she's
at
going
what
to talk about
scope we can call
the
something
wider
as
defense of the
sustainable.
industrial system.
And next, as an agroecologist, I work a lot with like food system level, with people with other disciplines. And so something that I guess we all learned is that we have to be able to measure sustainability. So, for example, if we speak about agroecological or say organic production, can it feed the world? So these are numerical things that we have to do, arithmetics, in order to say that it's robust evidence. The same goes for an improvement in, say, broiler production. So to what extent it can help us to reach the goal on sustainability. So this is numerical realism that I also want to discuss today. And yes, Frédéric, when I really saw the declaration for the first time and the way you entered it, what was give voice to many scientists who work in this around the world in various disciplines, achieve a balanced view on the future of animal systems, I felt like, wow, that's the way to go. As an agroecologist also, I was very pleased it was mentioned so clearly. But then when I read the declaration, I must admit I was quite disappointed, because I thought, well, what I saw was not in any way a balanced view on the issue.
True, get him.
And sort of to evoke specific the best practices and say that this is the whole production in which we operate in the modern world, I think, is not a realism of which we talk here. And so the main message of Dublin Declaration, Barbara, is not, as you put it, sort of, how to say, that it's against the elimination of livestock. Actually, the Dublin
We can do
Declaration
Q&A,
gives
guys.
a message to people that reducing animal consumption or production is not necessary or even helpful to sufficiently limit the environmental impact of the whole system. And we have an independent study that shows exactly this. And what was even more disturbing, that the associated paper in Nature that was based on the Dublin Declaration then arrives at even more astounding statement that says that we need to expand the sector in order to address the issues of the humanity. And this is, again, something that I want to focus on today. So what I want, I guess, to say is that the response of people like myself and then about 50 other academics, because it's not only not only the Guardian who criticized the Dublin Declaration and not my personal blog in the table. There were at least 5 academic pieces of writing, to which, Frédéric, you didn't, I think, write. I can send you all 5 links. That from different perspective looked at Dublin Declaration and went and scrutinized it on the best evidence we have. And as I say, there were like 50 scientists with variety of disciplines, indeed, from climate research to nutrition and health, social policies, etc.
She's being more direct than I feared
and
she might.
I think many of them exactly work with food system level, and they model and build scenarios to see what is realistic. So it's not like beyond my opinions or my liking or disliking of cows or chicken, really, that I came into this process. It's basically my awareness about the scope of literature that works with sustainability of livestock, and also all the major reports. You mentioned one, but we have EPBES, we have IPCC, we have FAO reports, and many other reports that all arrive at the same conclusion based on the best evidence we have and robust models that reduction of the livestock is the only way we realistically can have it sustainable in our food systems and feed the world and try address the problems. And even that is a big challenge indeed. So, and I thought when I read the declaration, was it 3 years ago, I somehow thought in my naivety that we have a certain academic consensus about what needs to be done. Not individual voices that say, like, let's stop the livestock altogether and jump to new technology 100%. But as an academic community, that the majority of research that we have demonstrates sufficiently well the scope of the challenges and also the need for the reduction. But it seems that I was wrong, and so
how is he nodding to that? He can't agree with that. That was pretty good opening from Herzon.
Dr. Iryna. So let's try to break some of these points down and understand better both of your perspectives. So maybe giving the word to Professor Frédéric. I would like to first bring to this discussion also the most recent EAT Lancet Commission report written by over 70 scientists, which was also mentioned by Professor Frédéric, stating that, so bringing new evidence, stating that the adoption of a plant-rich diet with modest consumption of meat could prevent 40,000 early deaths today. And this new edition explicitly asks for cuts in annual populations of ruminants, of non-ruminants, and it doesn't completely eliminate red meat from one's diet, but recommends 1 serving of red meat per week, slightly more for chicken and fish, and 250 grams of dairy. And so, bearing this in mind, I would like to ask Professor Frédéric that in this declaration and other essays of yours, you advocate for a regular meat consumption. And so using this report as a starting point, I'd like to ask if you would be open to a reform to the system that cuts meat production and reduces meat intake in these terms. So just a few small portion a week. Would this, in your view, as a nutrition expert, would this, in your view, fulfill nutritional needs, or is this not regular enough? And what is regular enough? Is it a challenge still to measure this? What do you think?
Well, so we have to be careful here when we refer to my positions or the Dublin Declaration positions, which are not necessarily going to be the same thing. I'm one voice within a community here of more than 1,000 scientists. So I'll try to speak on behalf of the Dublin Declaration manifesto at that higher level. We'll have lots of different views within the community of Dublin signatories about what the appropriate amount of meat would be and so forth. Also about whether or not we have to reduce to certain degrees. You will find all sorts of different numbers. If you would do a survey within that community, you will have people that will advocate actually very substantial probably reductions. And you will probably have some others that think we can go forward with what we have. You will have a spectrum again of ideas. So I cannot have a single, I cannot throw in single numbers here.
Some stay the same and some reduce, he said. Didn't say anyone thinks they should increase.
For red meat. I don't advocate for red meat as such that I'm, telling the world that everybody has to eat meat. I think you can actually be perfectly healthy without consuming meat. It just is a matter of dietary robustness. Meat is a very valuable nutritional source, and you can be a lacto-ovo pesco vegetarian or just a vegetarian, not an omnivore, not eating meat, and you'll find your means to achieve nutritional adequacy without too much trouble. It's just that if you push human diets towards a degree of restriction of animal source foods, you complicate the task of getting properly nourished. And you complicate it especially in populations that have elevated needs for some reason, whether that's growing populations, developed populations, older adults, people with chronic disease whatsoever. They may need different types of solutions. So if Eat Lancet communicates to the planet that they want to have plant-rich diets, why would I be opposed to that? I think plants are as well very nutritious. That's absolutely not the issue. However, if they talk about modest red meat, we have to know that in reality, what they're really asking for, at least in the first report, there was 7 grams of beef. I think in the latest one, I haven't looked at it, so I didn't have the time. But I think they've put pork and beef together in one compartment, and now they have a window of 7 to 14 grams per day. Those are low amounts, and if we're going to prescribe them top down to global populations because it's a planetary health diet for all of us, I think you may end up by creating issues in parts of the population. So advocating meat, what I'm really doing is saying that we should be careful when we vilify meat, because we're vilifying a very nutritious source of food, and we take it too much for granted that we can just replace it easily with other foods. We can, but it takes knowledge, it takes skill, it takes resources, and it depends a lot on the personal needs. I don't know if I answered all of your questions, but
yes, you did, and just to...
The main advice I gave to Herzon was to watch the time, because he's going to be able to ramble his way through it. We're at half an hour already. She's only spoken once.
Meat and dairy products weekly could indeed have an impact, especially in certain sections of population. I would now like to give the word to Dr. Iryna and ask if you see a role for livestock in society, and if so, in which terms. So do you believe that improvements to the current system are enough, or that reducing production is inevitable? I would also like to understand for you what is lacking in terms of research to meet these two needs, so as achieving stable nutrition levels, but also ensuring respect for biodiversity while cutting emissions.
Okay, Barbara, if I may go back to what Frédéric said, because I want also to underline that things on which we're on the same plane. So it's not a debate on every single thing. So what I heard you saying, Frédéric, is that you think that reducing meat consumption and say dairy, also including so animal-based food, is possible.
Contextually
Because
possible.
the well-balanced diet can be achieved with a variety of, plant-based also sources, etc., and also animal-based
She's doing
food.
well getting clear
But reduction
concessions
is
then.
possible.
It's contextually possible. Yes, it depends where you start from. I mean, so let me give you an example.
No,
For
he's going
instance,
to go off on a whole
there's
tear now.
information
This
coming
was
out
just
of
a setup
Australia
question.
where they
She's
find that very young children, toddlers, essentially have increasing rates of anemia because their parents are no longer giving them red meat because of understandable reasons,
He's going to go off on
anxiety
a whole
about climate
tear now.
and so forth, the health messages. And we see increasing rates of anemia. We see increasing rates of anemia in female populations in the West.
Okay.
So
Interrupt.
the problem I have is when you give blanket advice, reduce red meat. That's a very dangerous statement because you may hit populations that are specifically receptive to these messages that are the most vulnerable ones. Some people will be as healthy with less meat than they have now, but it depends on your body, on your personal needs, which are biological to a certain part, but they may also be different reasons. So it's a contextual discussion.
Absolutely.
And so what I want to bring here with this,
oh my goodness,
with my publications, the Dublin Declaration, and all of that, is that we need more contextual discussions if we talk about changes in the system.
So, okay, so we have vulnerable populations, young children, pregnant women, elderly people. So their consumption of meat probably should stay, what is healthy, and maybe in many cases even increased, as you say, if you exclude and not replace it with anything. Or there are vulnerable populations in the world that don't probably get even enough of proteins or other micronutrients. Fair enough. Now, with the planetary boundaries, of course, are global phenomena. So we have to work also on the global scale or then regional scale of what is then possible to achieve. So if we want to sustain certain dietary intake of animal-based products in some groups that have really need on it, or in regions that are not under receiving it, that are under receiving it, then the global sort of boundary evokes the need to reduce it elsewhere.
Yes.
If we have to stay within the boundaries, the limits.
Yes.
That's what the Eat Lancet basically calculates. So this is a just redistribution, what they evoke it. If we want everybody have nutritious diet, healthy diet, and also in the last version, they also calculate modest food costs. So the redistribution is important and the overall reduction is inevitable. Otherwise, we're not getting there.
But there's something important to understand about the Eat Lancet diet.
He's not going to give a clear response on that.
I think not even realized, but the Eat Lancet diet, the design of the Eat Lancet diet is not an environmental design. It is a nutritional design. It's coming from Walter Willett in Harvard. It has been designed based on health theory, not on environmental theory. It then has been matched against planetary boundaries and against those scenarios. Fair enough. And they make the statement that at least for a lot of those factors, it's actually fitting in. But the design hasn't been on environmental grounds. We could design other diets that have environmental effects that probably would be benign. The design as such, the way they talk about the specific categories and the specific amounts of food is coming from nutritional theory. So that's about Eat Lancet. We can take the discussion to other examples than Eat Lancet where we have meat reduction. Now, then again, I think policy doesn't work like that, or reality doesn't work like this. It's not because you're going to eat less of a certain food in part of the world that it will increase in another part of the world. That's distribution economics. That's not how reality works.
But there's a limited total that we can eat.
Planning management system. Now, what we really need to do is to improve systems in places where the performance is low, the efficiency is low, where there's a lot of gains to be made because of innovation and because of better practices, and that will already bring us very, very far.
Mm-hmm. But one question, Dr. Frédéric, but do you believe that it is possible? Isn't there always a risk when you want to increase efficiency to stay stuck with highly intensive farms, which then have an impact both on environment and animal welfare? Won't we always be stuck there?
Not necessarily. I mean, that's probably where you would get divergent ideas within a Dublin community again. When Iryna before she mentioned the fact that what did she said something like we evoke the best practices and identify it with the way we operate. It's not what we're doing. What we're doing is setting the goal for the best practices. The best practices should be what we aim for. It is not what we're doing right now.
Majority is from factory farms.
Will that come with differences in production systems and affect the availability of animal source food? Well, it may as well be. But for me, one fundamental thing, if we talk about policy, is that we should shift away from putting the burden of responsibility on the individual, and we should put it on the system. We should absolutely build in hard red lines with respect to deforestation, water pollution, poor animal welfare. We build in those red lines. We incentivize the processes that bring in the pluses of biodiversity and so forth, and you will end up with a certain production output. And then that will imply that the levels of different foods will change. You will have probably changes from between ruminants and monogastrics. You will have changes in the output levels overall of meat in certain areas compared to other areas. So all those things will move and change, but it's a different approach than asking the population to go to 7 grams of beef a day. That's a very different paradigm.
Yeah. Could I step in, Barbara?
Yes.
So there are several things here. I think we want to go back again. Good. I mean, planetary heat dance is one of the assessments that are based on how much we can actually produce and therefore how much we can afford eating.
I told her stay focused.
There are several other very much, evidence-based synthesis that have been published before it Lancet and afterwards that say calculate what is possible to produce with best possible practices such as agroecological farming, organic farming, free-range farming, pastoral agriculture, monogastrics based on byproducts and wastes, etc. I haven't seen a single study of this kind that would say that we can either sustain the current level of production or consumption if we improve the systems this way, or certainly not increase them. Right. Every single of them says that we have to indeed drastically reduce some of the production systems. Some of them may be more on ruminant side, some of them more on monogastric side, but that's the results we're getting. I don't want to cite how many in percentage, but some of them are quite considerable. So the evidence, the robust calculations, the numerical evidence, what is realistic within the biophysical boundaries is quite clear. And this is what not the Dublin Declaration gives its reader to understand. And this is where the problem lies.
Okay, so from what I understand from your point of view and also from what I read on your essays, you find that there is already enough scientific consensus to take action. But given the sensitivity of this topic, shouldn't there be also more evidence, for example, on what you mentioned, on could we keep same production levels within planetary boundaries with more sustainable systems? What I want to ask is to have a more common starting point to be able to take action in this sensitive topic, because otherwise it seems like we can't take, we really can take action. Don't you think that there should be more evidence on that side?
Absolutely, Barbara. Of course, we need more evidence, and quite urgently, and this is what we continue working on. Like I have a big academic funded project which tries to define what could be a sustainable niche for livestock in the country like Finland. So assuming that we use livestock for our food systems, how much and in what ways we have to do it. And the results are very similar. I mean, these are the same numbers, the same biophysical processes that we speak about. We need to improve on many levels, from the primary production of fields to the conversion rates of feed towards the output. and B, we have to reduce this. And what is very important, what evidence we come from, and there is just this year published a synthesis, like evidence synthesis of all modeling studies that we have so far. Ellen Roos was one, SLU was one of the major causes that concludes that the challenges are so big now on nutrients, on climate emission, on biodiversity, etc., that not single solution anymore is strong enough, effective enough to solve this. So the very big dietary change, greenhouse gas intensity, nutrient management, feed efficiency, crop productivity, all of it is needed. It's not anymore like one solution possible to achieve. And again, alternative protein sources, absolutely essential. Because what is happening, Barbara, again, is exactly what you're saying. The most of production increase happens from very intensive units of farming animals. It's not from pastoral systems. They're very minor. I mean, 10% only of all meat is produced from pasture systems, something like this. And only minor percentage of that is actually good for biodiversity, let's say, or sequester enough carbon to offset the emissions. So we're speaking of very, very small percentage of output that is kind of benign environmentally. The majority of it comes from like 20 store pig units in China or really big broiler production, also in the European Union. Finland is another good example. Yeah, that's where it comes. It's not agroecological systems. So what we say in our academic response, again, that we need to both improve and downsize. And without downsizing, we cannot improve.
Okay, that's an interesting message for our panel. I would like to move on a bit to the questions by our audience.
Oh,
and
yes,
one of the
yeah.
questions...
Just add one little thing, Barbara, for the completeness of that interaction here. We do have. I mean, I fully agree that we need an entire toolbox to deal with the situation. We need to do many things at the same time. Also, interventions will not necessarily move the needle for all outputs in the right direction. Sometimes you have contradictory effects from one intervention may be good for something and bad for something else. So it's very complicated, and that's why we need all those scientific efforts. And now I'm fully with all of you that we have to build the scientific base and expand it. But I do have some concern about the suggestion that we have now reached a consensus and that the numbers are extremely clear. They're not really all that clear yet. Every modeling exercise comes with certain premises, comes with certain uncertainties, comes with certain built-in presuppositions, and there's a lot of possibilities, of a lot of options there that are still either not on the radar, have been neglected, have been ignored. You can have different scenarios that are both very productive and sustainable. You have sustainable intensification, but you have also extensive systems that can actually be upgraded. You have techniques like adaptive multi-paddock grazing, where you have quite high stocking rates that you have to move around that increase the output. So that there are ways of producing that are not always acknowledged very well in those kind of models, and they would require fundamental change. I agree, it's not going to be for tomorrow. They will need the incentives and so forth, but there are also options. And I think it's just it is moving science, and I'm not comfortable with the idea that we're saying we have reached the horizon here and we know how much we have to reduce and what we have to do. I think we need to kind of approach that system, that complicated food system, by bringing in the improvements that we can do, and we know a lot of things we can do. There are a lot of things we can do for biodiversity, which not necessarily going to
he's trying to run down the clock.
Productivity. But it would require fundamental steps and fundamental change.
If I can just ask one question, because there's one of the questions by our audience marries well precisely with what we are discussing here, and then I also have the opportunity to ask you this, Professor Frédéric, because I already asked something similar to Dr. Iryna. So first question by Anna Jamieson says, I feel that by focusing so much on omitting red meat from the food system, scientists have missed working on many other aspects of increasing sustainability, especially within the livestock sector. What are your thoughts on this? Would you like to?
Yeah, well, it's kind of what I'm saying, that if the
That was just
we
Freddie talking point.
very often the red meat is used as the kind of symbolic item in the food on the plate that is carrying all of the weight, and as long as we reduce red meat, everything's going to be okay. That is certainly not the case. I think Iryna will certainly also agree with me on this. It's not, because if you every kind of part of that system, and it's there's an animal plant binary that is often used here, as if all on the plant side is fine. We have many issues on the plant side as well. If we're going to take out lots of animal foods for reaching specific targets like Lancet is producing, is proposing, well, we'll have to replace those foods, and we will have to replace them with plant systems. And okay, again, you can produce those plants in harmful and benign ways, but it's that you have scaling problems there as well. There's a lot of optimism related to imitation animal foods. Well, people don't want them; they're not selling. People reject them. You have the lab foods; they are nowhere. They can't be scaled up. They're energy intensive. So there's an alternative side to the story as
we've
well.
We've looked at how these guys have been wrong about all the
take out the animal source food. It's easier said than done. You have to, and at the end also, okay, you have the environmental constraints, and we'll have to do our utter best to get to the best possible
this
solutions.
guy rambles.
But there's a trade-off also with public health and adequate nutrition, and all those things have to be balanced well. Transitions are on there's an urgency, I agree, but transitions have to be carefully planned, because if we're going to make very radical decisions at policy level by decimating herds or by moving people to red meat-free diets, well, it will come with consequences, like it or not.
Well, yeah, if I may, I mean, we're running out of time. I really want to go to the very core of why Dublin Declaration is so problematic, Frédéric.
Yes.
You know, there you write a scientific consensus that present animal agriculture as a global problem that needs to be downsized rather than optimized. So this is where I think we need both. Do you agree on it?
Good,
well,
direct
optimized
question.
For sure. I think we can both agree on that.
Okay. It also needs to be downsized.
Yeah, so the downsized part is something that I cannot put into numbers. I would not be able to predict, based on the best of evidence, to which degree we would need to downsize.
Keep pushing him.
Keep pushing him.
We have lots of models that show to what degree. Some of them are different. There is total vegan. There's some impact of meat. I mean, total vegan is a useful reference point, because then you can see whether adding animals is useful. And mostly we do see that they're useful to a certain degree. And then these figures exist. But I really want to see whether we are on the same plane, that we have no choice but also downsized the system that we created at the moment.
Will you give a straight
to be clear,
answer?
I'm not in principle blocking off downsizing myself personally. Again, I'm not talking for the Dublin Consortium. I think that very likely downsizing will be a result of introducing the boundaries of the playfield, right? But I don't find it productive to come up with a number which is mostly artificial, based on model approaches that can be heavily discussed in many cases. You can say that you're convinced of them. That's where probably we'll have to end in disagreement. But I think that if you
so would, yes, he said yes, we need
set
to downsize
those boundaries, I'm expecting that yes, you would probably have a downsize effect.
Yes,
in the system.
Excellent.
But I'm not comfortable, and I'm talking for myself.
Freddie Leroy says we need to decrease life to stop production.
Consortium. From my perspective, I don't think it's helpful to come up with a specific target that is coming from a certain model study that I think needs broader discussions, needs deeper, needs more evidence, needs more debate before we take
I want to make him clarify. Just say yes, so to be clear, we do need to.
Sorry, ask some, because we have to also answer some of the questions by our audience.
That was good, Herzon.
And I'd like to have a question to Dr. Iryna. So there's a question saying, you tend to focus on ruminants for monogastrics and per kilo of meat produced. Agroecological systems have very low performance, especially on GHG emissions, and the benefits they have on biodiversity and animal welfare are largely offset by the big loss in the GHG emissions. What is your reaction to that?
Yeah, perfectly correct. I mean, this is what it is. You can have a very efficient system like monogastrics, but then you lose on all those benefits, for example, biodiversity, because it's always negative through the feed production. So yeah, you can't have both here. And that's a very big difficulty.
That's a great concept. I can't believe you said that.
Like we already have 30% of, or 70% of all avian biomass apparently is by poultry. So 30% is wild birds. For ruminants, it's even worse. 30% is estimated to be just domesticated livestock, where 7% is wild animals, mammal animals. I mean, this is the world that is there on the plate now. And but I want to go back, Frédéric, because this is the paper that you published on Dublin Declaration in Nature, and there you cite yourself and your colleague Ederer. Expanding animal production output is the most readily available way to nourish the world sufficiently in the future.
Goodness.
And this is where I had to step in and ask
it
my
looks
colleagues
like a naughty
to
schoolboy who's
prepare
been caught.
a rebuttal in an academic journal. And this is what is 5 other academic pieces arguing with. And this is where I want to be very, very clear.
Right. Okay.
Man, she is nailing it.
What it's really saying is that in cases where we have serious problems of food security and nutrient security, expanding livestock is the best way we have to deal with those kind of situations. That's what it's really saying. It's not saying to expand livestock agriculture in Belgium. The purpose, the underlying meaning here is that it's one of the best tools we have currently to fix issues with undernourishment, malnourishment, and that's where the benefit of livestock is. It's a readily available technology, if you want, that has been mobilized over.
I can't believe how
over millennia. We have been using animals to improve food security situations.
Yeah. Okay, so what again we're bringing is the context. So in some places of the world we can increase it somewhat because the limitations of land and water are very tight in the places where people actually need to eat more calories or micronutrients. But expansion is just not physically possible. And the only way forward is a reduction. And how much in percentage we need to reduce, we leave to the modeling research and numerical studies, because the Dublin Declaration is a very beautiful piece of work. It's very well written and it says this sends very optimistic, very nice picture. No wonder many of my colleagues also signed it, because these are people who really like working with livestock. They see the value of them. And so from that bubble of liking livestock, it's easy to sign the declaration. But then the whole picture of what is realistic to achieve with agroecological methods or for low-income countries is missed entirely in this declaration. That's why I think it's so unbalanced, unfortunately. And my question next to you is: there is anything we can do together in order to balance it a bit more? Because, yeah, as I write in my essay, most of people who signed the Dublin Declaration are indeed coming from livestock industry, which doesn't mean that they are bribed by the industry. That's not for me to decide. What I'm saying, that it's a bubble. It's like, aeronautic engineer loves an airplane and may not see the impact of 100,000 flights that are being done daily.
I think the point we made that, or the question you asked of what can we do to reach a more common ground is important. And I would like to give the word to Professor Frédéric, if you'd like
last
to
3 minutes might
answer.
just be nice and tidy up.
And then we will soon have to wrap up.
Yeah. Well, I think it becomes clear from the conversation that we do have things in common. Absolutely. I mean, we both believe in the value of animals. We have different opinions of how much animals we need, most likely.
There are some great points in this debate.
We do also believe in the value of agroecological, agroecological benefits. We do believe in the complexity and the contextuality of things. So these are common grounds we can start from. Actually, the Dublin Declaration is not a modeling study. It is not even a study. It is just a warning against vilification of livestock, which we do see appearing. We do see it appearing in media. We do see it appearing in scientific literature, and we do see it appearing in sometimes in policy. It's a warning against anti-livestock sentiment. It doesn't take any position as such on herd sizes. It doesn't take any position as such on the ideal consumption patterns, the amount of red meat. It's completely agnostic about all of those things.
It does, because
so
it says
that's
it should
never
be
been the
maintained or
purpose of the
increased.
declaration. It is just a warning. Be careful, you policymaker, if you start deciding about livestock's future, be careful that you also listen to the work that is being done to make livestock systems better, more sustainable, and factor them in your discussion. That's what the declaration really is doing. For the rest, it is not a scientific study. It's not up to the declaration to give numbers and to decide upon the herd sizes or anything else. So within that framework, I think there's perfectly place for someone like Dr. Herzon as well to find a position and contribute to that evolving discussion on what the global mosaic, because it has to be a mosaic. And we talk again, if we talk about cutting herds, well, you may need to cut in some parts of the herds in some places of the world with some production systems, but you will probably have to upscale some other parts of the herds where you need them and where the beneficial effects are to be seen. So it's a very complicated moving picture, and it will need all of us to come to the best solution. And the best solution, I strongly believe in the scientific contrasts you have to create to find that good solution. That's why I think we always have to finish here.
Yeah, Frédéric, I agree with you. It's not a scientific piece of writing. Absolutely, it's more of a pamphlet, but it does send a message, very strong message, and it's confirmed by an independent research published just this year that it sends a message: reducing animal consumption and production is not necessary or even helpful to sufficiently limit the environmental impact, and that's a wrong message that it's sending.
But that's not our message.
This is where the worry is. And it's not balanced in this terms of evidence it presents, because the evidence is also about the reduction as a necessity.
Dr. Iryna, Dr. Frédéric, we would like to conclude on a more constructive note. So it became clear that there's common ground, but there's still also some challenges to make you to bring some more consensus, at least because today we also wanted to move a bit forward, really well, so not be too much stuck in the declaration and the rebuttals, etc. So we want to bring more insights to our audience, and I think for that the panel was definitely interesting. So I think we saw some common ground, as both sides are open to some reduction to more plant-based diets, but also acknowledging that science is still missing, that the way to improve farming is still missing, and also the scientific evidence there is needed, and that more focus should also be there in order for us to generate more consensus and to finally act on these very important issues. I think both of you also agree that a diversified toolbox is important, so not one solution fits all. I think both of you can agree to this. And there's still many challenges ahead, and I think that the debate and future debates can bring more consensus, hopefully, and finally that we can move forward towards a solution. And thank you very much for being here today with us and for your valuable insights. And I wish both of you a great day, and also to our audience, I hope everyone enjoyed. People are reacting positively, and have a nice day.
Thank you, Pathway, for hosting us, and good luck in your research.
Thank you both. Have a good day.
You too.
Woof. Oh, how about that? I think that was really good. I think that was really, really good. I was kind of nervous that Herzon would be a bit too polite and not really go hard. And also would get distracted by gish gallops and sort of lose the point and stuff like that, but she did really, really well. There were several times where she brought him back to say, you haven't answered the question here. And there was even one or two times where he laughed our sort of an admission that, oh, you've got me, Ray. I was trying to worm away from this, but you've got me. When she pushed him for a clear declaration that we need to reduce meat consumption, man, he did not want to say that. He did not want to say that. He's on the record now saying that. And that Herzon's done really well to set up the discussion to that point, to where he had to give it, and then he kind of tried to talk around it and get lost in the nuance and stuff, and that is the only point where she interrupted. There's lots of points where she looked like she wanted to interrupt him. That was the only point where she interrupted and said, come back, do we need to reduce meat consumption overall, right? And he said yes. He said yes, overall production's going to go down. And I have not heard him say that before. So that's a really fantastic concession to extract. Man, that went better than I would have hoped. Oh, that was good stuff.